time in Brighton history. He's competed at the state meet this year. Luke Newcomb, great IMer and a 100 breaststroker. He was second in the state this year. Missed out on being state champion by a fraction of a second. John McHugh, unfortunately, wasn't able to participate at state meet. He's one of our premier backstrokers and IMers in the state of Michigan. Had a season-ending injury 2 days before state meet. Wasn't able to compete. But lucky enough, we have someone like Mason Stasso to fill in his stead in the 400 freestyle relay that placed 13th. And Cole Ayton filled in for John in the medley relay, and they ended up 10th in the state. So the state team is the 13th best state team in the whole state of Michigan. Thank you.
Great job. Congratulations. Congratulations. Good job, bud. All right, bud. Congratulations. Yep.
So we're going to jump from the pool to a sport that takes all kinds of different athleticisms due to the different apparatuses that they compete on. I'm going to bring up Nancy Gregory, our head gymnastics coach, talk a little bit about her student athletes and the season they had competing in the sport of gymnastics.
Good evening. We have 5 of our 9 gymnasts here tonight. All of them worked hard. They all qualified for regional competition, and they all competed during the season. State-wise, the team placed 4th in the state, so we were very proud of that. And I'm working on some All-American stats for them to receive by the end of the season, which I guess it is the end, but I'm working on it now. So they will get that before everything is done and over. So I'm proud of them, and I think they did a wonderful job.
Congratulations. Great job. Good job. Congratulations. Yeah. Congratulations. Congratulations. Good to see you. Coach.
Congratulations. We'll go either way.
All set? Yeah, perfect. All right, congratulations. Here's this one.
So we're going to transition from gymnastics to the sport of boys bowling. Not sure if I saw Coach Saffron walk in maybe while we were getting the first groups up, but if he's here, come on up. If not, I know we've got some of our boys bowlers here, so gentlemen, please come on up.
I suppose I will speak on Will's behalf today.
Gotcha.
You probably got busy with work.
Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about this group, and then I'll let Hayden say a couple words as well. One, you can't just get jewelry like this just anywhere. So you got to be legit, without a doubt. And this group of young men qualified for the first time in school history for the state finals, finishing 12th in the state of Michigan. We're represented by Hayden Hale, Jacob Meekum, Ethan Parker, Andon McDonald, Nick Mosko, Carter Smiley, Troy Asbell, James Chmielewski, Joey Coleman, and Johnny Saunders. Also, Jimmy Chmielewski also qualified as an individual and finished 21st in the state of Michigan in Division I. And Hayden, any other words to offer?
I want to personally congratulate James. Sophomore made it to states. Congratulations, my friend. He was the 3rd person while I was at this high school to make it. I made it junior year, and my best friend Zachary DeLong, who graduated and now attends Cleary, also went to states. And I'm very proud of what we've accomplished this year, and I hope that you guys can continue the legacy. So thank you.
Nice job, gentlemen.
Great job. Congratulations. See what you got right now. You're all supposed to see the red on these golden shirts, red.
Solid. Solid, man.
So from the lanes to the slopes, we're going to talk about our boys and girls ski program here. Coach Street's actually coaching in a girls lacrosse match right now against Cranbrook, but Coach Lundy is here, and so I'm going to bring up Coach Lundy to say a few words about our girls and boys ski program.
Come on, guys.
We're a big team. Thanks, John. Yeah, I can sit down if you like. It's not too late. Hi, guys. So the ski team, boys and girls, did great this year. Men's and women, excuse me. They won everything. They tried out all year until they got to states, and then it was boys 4th and girls 6th. And so did a fantastic job. Izzy made first team state, so which is pretty awesome. Militello and
Wave.
and just
Wave
a
cheer
great job
fans.
all year long. Great kids, great support. We were super deep this year, so if somebody made a mistake down the line, we take care of it. And so they really supported themselves for a great job. Smith.
Thank you, school board, for having us. This is very cool. John, thank you for supporting the ski team. I want to thank Coach Street for his great leadership. We have a great coaching staff.
Coach Jack.
Coach Jack, who's a ex-Northville ski racer, came back to help us out as well. We just have a great group of talented, very fast athletes. We also have great leadership on this team that I'd like to recognize our captains as well for the great leadership this year. They won everything they entered, just about, and then completely crushed the state finals. So, well done. Well done, guys.
Nice job, guys. Thanks, Jack. Great job.
Did you get your hair cut?
Just for this.
I figured you did.
Thank you so much.
Great job. Congratulations. Congratulations. Well done. All right. Hey, John, what's going on? I'm going to see you in the summer one, too. Yeah. Great job. Thanks for what you guys do. Congratulations, Coach. Congratulations, Coach. Absolutely. Thank you.
So our next program that we're going to bring up transitions us back inside from the slopes to the mats. I'd ask our head wrestling coach, Sean Scott, come up and talk a little bit about our boys and girls wrestling program and their successes this year.
So first I'm going to talk about the two individuals that are not here is Nate Stark and Colin Jewell. Colin Jewell was 4th in the state this year, and Nate Stark was a freshman and qualified. As far as this group goes right here, we got Jackson Johnson at the end right here, state qualifier this year as a freshman. It's actually really hard to do in the sport of wrestling to get to that level. So big accomplishment there. Zach Knapp, 8th, sophomore this year. Travis went from qualifying twice, not placing, junior, finally got on the podium this year, 4th. Sabrina Noss, 2-time state champ, 2-time undefeated state champ. First year MSSAA sanctioned the sport of girls wrestling this year. And she was the first girl in the state of Michigan to win a state title. So huge accomplishment there. And she's also ranked 1st in the country. So she's got a lot of accolades. Hoping for four state titles, and I hope we get there. So no pressure. And then we got Aiden Smith. He's a state champ this year. He lost once to an out-of-state school. So I think he's undefeated in my eyes, state champ. But great group of guys. The season was was up and down. Wrestling's a grueling sport, so these guys cut weight and they maintain. They're very disciplined and hardworking. So, got a young group coming in, and we have a lot of success on the horizon. So I'm excited for this group. So thank you guys for having us here. Thank you, John, and I'm ready for next year. So congratulations.
She beat that kid from Holt last year. Good job. Congratulations, Coach. All right, great job.
So just before we bring up our next group, I'll touch on a couple highlights throughout the other winter sports seasons. Boys basketball finished 14-9 and ended up competing in the district finals. Girls basketball was 17-8. They were MHSA district champions and regional finalists. Our girls competitive cheer program were also district champions. Girls bowling finished 8th in their division. That's a program that where we're trying to rebuild a little bit. We're trying to recruit some young ladies to throw the ball down the lane and represent just as our boys have, and looking forward to that coming around. Probably the thing I'm most proud of, not just the student athletes in the room, but all of our student athletes this winter, 81.3% of them were BHS scholar athletes or had a 3.0 GPA or higher. So 81% is pretty far on that. The next group we're going to bring up is our hockey program. Coach Cavisto's in the house here, so if you want to bring your young men that were able to attend tonight up and tell us a little bit about Brighton hockey.
I'm short, so I can hide behind them. But we got half of our 18 players here tonight. We finished 22-6-1, won the regional championship, lost in the state championship game this year. Had 6 of our guys named All-State, which is the highest number we've had. Levi Penelo is the first-team All-State goaltender, sophomore. Cam Duffany, first-team All-State forward. Nick Baker's not here at a baseball game tonight, was first-team All-State. Jack Sexsmith was first-team All-State defenseman, and Maddox McMullen and Lane Petit was second-team All-State. And at the end of the line, here's Mason Melville. He was academic All-State, which is pretty darn impressive. So good group of guys, had a pretty successful year overall.
Good job, Tom. Great season. Good job. Yeah. Congratulations. Congratulations. Good job. Congratulations. Absolutely. Congratulations. Good job. Congratulations. Congratulations, Coach. Come on, here's the certificates for him. Yeah, thanks, Coach.
And before we bring our last group up, I'd be remiss, not only on behalf of the student athletes here this evening, but all of our winter student athletes, to say thank you to the Board of Education as well as our central office staff, but really to the entire Brighton community. I mean, Brighton Athletics is just that. It's, it's a community happening, and the support that we receive from the community day in and day out is really what makes it go for our student athletes. And I know that they would say thank you, but please accept my gratitude on their behalf. And our last group we're going to introduce to you this evening is our Brighton Pom and Dance program that's coached by Miss Caitlin Pelazzola. Come on up, Coach, and tell us a little bit about your girls and your season.
Alrighty, well, thank you for having us. We have 6 of our 11 varsity pom dancers here. But after placing first and second at all of our regional competitions this season, we went down to Florida for the national championship. They went straight to finals with both dances that we took, which was the first time ever in Brighton Palm history. That means they completely surpassed the second round, semifinal round, due to the fact that they scored so high. So they ended up 11th and 13th in the nation out of hundreds of teams from across the country. So they did fantastic.
Yeah. Congratulations. 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 Well done. Congratulations. Congratulations, coaches.
Again, thank you to all our student athletes. Spring sports, honestly, believe it, it's true, are underway. So if you get a chance, come on out and check out some of our spring student athletes doing what they do. I promise you, it will be getting warmer. Not sure when, but it will. So thank you. And disclaimer, you're more than welcome to stay for the meeting. However, if you'd like to leave, now's not that time.
Appreciate it. Sean Scott. You're staying? What do you? It's funny because that's what it always comes down to. And you know, if we had, thanks, John, players would have been great. Play for great. It wouldn't even be a Hayden with a line. Hayden, okay, yep. Oh, absolutely. I got to shake his hand. Yes. How are you? You're a senior this year? Okay, now, you know, we have a showcase in the hallway for you guys to set up.
Yep, that's actually, we got all the medals and the trophies and all that stuff. Yeah, so Jen said she was gonna.
And let's get something up, and I think they're working, Mr. Kern is working on some graphics. You guys need to showcase that, and get things in there, and people should get their sign up going. You're a senior this year, right? Yes. We need help to get that in there, so you get your improvement.
Absolutely.
So we'll help you, so that the key is in the office right there in the hallway.
Oh, okay.
Secretary, key that you hold.
Perfect.
So let's see, Mr. Kern, you guys get worked out.
Yeah, yeah.
You guys get that going. If you need me, or give me a call.
Wonderful, thank you.
Congratulations, Chip. Glad you kept the, I heard what you're doing. You got you guys going, so that's good.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
I think so, or else the practice. Yeah.
This one's out. All those for the board. You get, I'm around that, I'll get set
Out there. Going at it.
That's fine.
I think we'll change it.
Yeah, his hands.
All right, so that moves us to the next item on the agenda, which is the call to the public. If there is anyone that would like to address the board at tonight's call to the public, we ask that you fill out there's a card at the back table and deposit it in the box over there next to Mr. Engleter. You have 3 minutes to address the board. Dr. Krebs will be keeping time for your 3 minutes. We'll give you a yellow card to give you when you have 30 seconds left, and then the red card when your allotted time has expired. So without further ado, Anna Penela. And then Nicole Colors will be on deck. And those are the only 2 cards that I have this evening.
Hello. They were way more fun than I am. That was fun though. Thank you for having all those kids. That was exciting to see. One little thing that came to my attention, I got a note for my daughter Claire, who's in 3rd grade, regarding attendance, which is obviously important, very important. She was absent for 9 days this trimester, which triggers a note saying what is going on. Unfortunately, 5 of those days were for my father's funeral and 2 were for my nephew's funeral, and 2 she was sick. But with this note, it says attendance is a major factor for learning. Your regular support or your regular attendance and support of it is required for your best educational experience. It's important that we work together. All of these things are very true and very important, but in the next paragraph, it says here, please note that this does not reflect any time that your child may have been absent for quarantine. And then on the next page, it says schools are responsible for teaching every child, but teachers can't do their job if your child is absent. I mean, that applies also to quarantine if your child is absent. So I guess, I mean, this is kind of looking back. I hope we never have to deal with quarantines in the future. But it kind of makes me feel a little bit like when the school says my child can't attend, that's fine. But when we have incidences at home, it doesn't really feel like an even working together approach when she clearly had to miss for unfortunate circumstances, but that wasn't necessarily accepted. But quarantine absences are, and it seems as though this letter says that doesn't impact her learning, and we all know it definitely does. I mean, it's unfortunate for kids to miss for any reason, but quarantine is also a part of that. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention that it's important as parents that we work together with the school and teachers and clearly everyone on the same page. But you know, missing school is missing school, and that's what we were fighting so hard for, was to make sure that these kids didn't have to miss. One thing that it also doesn't address is teachers missing. So kids that don't get the continued direction from the same teacher, or you know, a substitute teacher continuously, who potentially may be abusing the some of the policies with COVID. That is something that I was concerned about too. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention that, you know, unfortunately kids will miss, and I know that this is probably not necessarily targeted at my child in her circumstance, because those are unfortunate, but you know, working together is an even thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool colors.
Good evening. Tonight was great. I want to thank you guys for recognizing the athletes. I think that's a huge factor for our kids. Athletics is just so much more than a sport. It's the camaraderie, it's the friendship. My son, who's 14, is looking for a job, and he has 2 friends from the bowling team who are helping him. So it's so great for the kids, and it's wonderful to see this boardroom filled with student athletes. With that said, I want to shift a little bit. I would like to stress the importance of literacy. There's going to be a need for early literacy intervention in the next few years, because we don't know the effects of the last 2 years, but literacy has been affected. So I would like the HR committee to just put a note for that, to for the need for early literacy intervention, because it will be very much needed. Thank you.
Okay, that closes the call to the public for this evening and takes us into the for action portion of our agenda. Item A, approval of the regular minutes of March 14, 2022. We have a motion. So moved. Moved by Mr. Stahl. Support. Support by Ms. Mitchell. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Next item B, approval of the board committee minutes of March 21, 2022. Do we have a motion? Do we have Ms. Mitchell?
Support.
Support by Ms. Reed. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Next item C, approval of the board work session minutes of March 21, 2022. Do we have a motion?
Support.
Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. Next item is the human resources report. Mr. Scaly.
Yes, the human resource report is presented for your review and approval. We have received retirement notifications from these individuals effective at the end of the 21-22 school year. We are planning to have a formal retirement recognition program for our retirees this year at the June 13th Board of Education meeting. We ask that you approve the human resource report as presented.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion for approval of the human resources report?
Support.
Ms. Reed, supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion? I just would like, I'd like to just extend a heartfelt thank you to all of these staff members that are retiring this year. We appreciate all of your dedication and commitment to our students and to the district, and we wish you the best of luck in all future endeavors. Mr. Conley?
Yeah, and I think this, having the recognition coming up, I think that's overdue. I think we've missed that many years as these teachers have retired, and we haven't got a chance to even, as they, again, 30 plus years of service to our district, get to say goodbye. It's like, thank you, and they worked really hard. So that's a great start. So glad to hear you're doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. The next item, E, Neola policy updates. Mr. Scaling?
Yes, these three revised Neola policy updates reflect the current EDGAR provisions and should be adopted to maintain accurate policies. A brief summary was provided for these recommendations on March 14th. We ask that you approve these Neola policies as presented.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Reed, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Moves us to item F, kinetic flooring. Mr. Ingleton.
Yep, we've gone over this at previous meetings. Wanted to let you know we did receive, or we did have a public bid opening for the kinetic floor recently. I have brought the results for you. There was only one bidder as expected, considering it's pretty much a sole source product. As expected, it came in at about 45,600 British pounds. At the time of opening, that equated to about $59,509. Just bringing it forward for action.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion?
Moved. Support.
Moved by Mr. Trombley, supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
I have
Ms.
a
Reed?
question. Mr. Ingleter, I noticed on here that you've got an Iran sanctions column. Does that mean that they certified that they're in compliance with our Iran sanctions?
They did, and they did notarize that with a British notary at the time they submitted their documentation.
Thank you.
My question would be, do we know what the shipping is going to cost us yet?
No, I included that on the actual form itself, that this would include any related duties and taxes, but I don't know.
It's included in there, isn't it?
They were supposed to give us a proposal that included the shipping, so I'm hoping that that's included in that number.
Any other questions? I just have a question. So it's sole sourced with this company based out of England. Do they have an American affiliate, for example, for repair work or maintenance?
Yeah, they partner with install teams here in the States. They don't send a crew across the pond to
I
actually
assume
install.
they would not do that,
Yeah.
so that's why I was.
No,
wondering.
they do have install crews in the East, and I think I can't remember. I did have that discussion with them. They're somewhere in the New Jersey to Ohio range, somewhere in there. I can't recall. That was a couple months
So
ago.
the installer and the contractor that would be responsible for any maintenance or repairs would be somebody located in the US.
Yeah, and we're looking at, we put in the bid for extra parts kits and whatnot so that we can hopefully, they appear to be fairly simple as far as putting in and taking out.
Any further questions?
I guess the only other thing I would ask, I mean, I imagine Covington doesn't just make these, there's not a big need for these, so what else do they do? How long have they been around?
I don't know the answer to that, Ken.
Thank you.
I was only looking at them for this, so that was my research, was just looking at that.
I do have a question about this. So what's the educational plan with this? I understand that it's something for the students to see that we have, that this would be generating energy. I don't see the educational benefit other than observation. I don't know how it would work and how that would fit into the curriculum, what the educational advantage to having them for this versus just observing it and seeing it in action.
I don't know if I can answer that one, but it's, for the most part, it is observation. It's something expanding what they're exposed to, I suppose, future technologies or at least advanced technologies. It's there, like I indicated at past meetings, it will show up on a monitor that's there. And also, I believe we have LED strips that are going to light up. I think it's enough to power that, but there's nothing a whole lot more than that. It's not going to generate enough to.
Right, so from
power
an
anything.
educational perspective, it's observations. That would be low level on Bloom's taxonomy in terms of hierarchical thinking.
But the entire STEM center has been built on observation. That's why there's the glass piece of drain pipe. That's why there's the exposed piping in the walls. That's why there's the glass wall to be able to see in there. That's why there's the manhole that's got the cover on it that you can see the rainwater coming into. So the entire center itself was built around the observation for kids to be able to see how this stuff functions and works.
And added to that, Bill, again, it's no different than the solar panels in a way, because we're not going to feed the grid with the solar panels. And they're there to get the mindset. I just got back from out west, and let me tell you something, there's serious business out there. The solar panels are, and it's what's going to happen. And I saw a fleet of electric cars. There's fleets of them running from the west coming this way. So it's all in the cards, and things are changing, and it's how it's going to be. And I would like a roll call vote on this too, please.
I'm sorry?
I'd like a roll call vote if I could on this particular one, please.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Second, Mike.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Trombley,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
No.
Dr. Krebs,
No.
Mr. Stahl,
No.
Mr. Myers.
Yes. So that passes 4-3. All right, that moves us into the next item on the agenda, item G, amended budget 2021-2022. Mr. Ingleton.
Yes, again, as we covered at a previous meeting, this is the budget amendment as of today. Budgets are constantly moving. We are looking to amend this again in June before we wrap up the year, but this is where we stand as of the last meeting. So I am asking you to approve this so we can move forward.
Okay. Do we have a motion for approval of the amended budget for 21-22? Moved by Mr. Stahl, support by Ms. Mitchell. Any discussion?
So we have a draft budget here, and, I'm looking at this and I'm getting it, and I know we hired Mr. Ingleter as our finance director. But at the end of the day, we're working off an 80-some thousand or an $82 million budget, somewhere in that neighborhood, 85.
93 now.
93 with, I guess, additional funding. Where is the oversight? Why isn't there any board input or board oversight other than bringing stuff like this for us just to vote on? Where's a finance committee for, $93 million?
I can answer that. Because we don't have one.
I mean, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers to oversee this stuff. And who's overseeing it? I'm not saying that he's doing anything wrong. I'm just asking who, from a board standpoint, oversees this stuff. And who helps make, a board, in my opinion, is to help make decisions and to foster good judgment and to have that responsibility of making sure things are moving forward in a proper way. So why is it only one person in charge of a $95 million budget?
Well, I think the premise of your question is not an accurate one.
Why not?
Well, because first of all, when we had the original budget,
Yep.
there was a finance committee. This was going back in 2021.
Right.
So there was a finance committee that met. There
Mhm.
was multiple meetings where it was presented as part of for future action with a recommendation from the finance committee.
Mhm.
It was reviewed. Obviously, every board member has the opportunity to either talk to a committee member
Correct.
or Mr. Engleter at any point in time.
Right.
Based upon all that review and recommendation.
What was the budget at the time?
The budget was approved. It's right here. It's the 87 million. There's the two columns.
Okay, so it was 87 at that time.
Right, and so since then,
Mhm.
as additional federal funding and there are obviously changes that have come forward.
Correct.
There is an amended budget that
Mhm.
essentially is to reconcile what has happened since the original budget. And I've been on the finance committee in the 4 years, my first 4 or 5 years. We never had a finance committee meeting with respect to the amended budget because the issues that were being adjusted were, I mean, they were essentially reflecting what has already transpired. For example, like additional fundings that's come in
Right.
during the period. So there has been a policy committee that reviewed the original budget consistent with what we've always done. And it would be my full expectation, consistent with what we've decided in the past couple of months, that as we begin the planning for the 2022.
Who's we?
The board. The 2022-2023 budget cycle and the planning, we will have our committee of the whole, it'll be subject to the committee of the whole meeting, just like the bond has been, just like what we will have with the policy committee. So that will be something that will carry through consistent with what we historically have done.
So that'll probably be one meeting. We'll sit and talk about finances.
Probably. Sure.
Just briefly, just a couple other thoughts on it. In every meeting, we talk about expenditures.
Yep.
You cannot add expenditures without coming to the board. For example,
Right.
we added a second police liaison.
Right.
That added to the budget. So
Mhm.
we didn't call it, we didn't have to have a budget finance meeting, but we brought it to the board and said, can we spend this allocation?
Right.
Can we add a mental health person?
Mhm.
All of those adjustments, we cannot make those kind of decisions without coming through the board.
Correct.
So every single board meeting, there's adjustments that take place that come, so that's part of your oversight on that decision-making. The other part of this, when you talk about oversight, is the audit process is something that you get at the end of the year, but this is something that takes place all year, where there's constantly, checks and balances that are part of this entire audit process that by a third party, ensuring that we're managing our finances with fidelity, according to the law, according to all the different pieces, and that's something that Mr. Engleter and Ms. Patterson, who works in his office, they do this all the time, reconciling. So those are some of the things, and then just as Mr. Meyer was talking about, as we start to plan for that 22-23 budget, it's going to be right here because this is going to be a committee of the whole. So we'll come back here, we'll talk about that.
But correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I get the audit part, but that's just based on accounting principles to make sure everything is going in the right column and everything balances at the end of the day, right? That's not, well, you should be doing this with the money, or maybe we should be considering doing this, or any type of financial advice.
Right. That's coming back to the board. The board is the one making the decisions on any additional.
We're making decisions on what you're asking us to approve. But again, it's not that as a committee of, 4 minds or 3 minds sitting there along with the other minds, trying to strategize and to come up with what's the best solution moving forward for Brighton area schools, other than when we sit at the committee of the whole. Is that correct?
I think it's a collaborative piece. I mean, for example, in our future actions, item A is additional expenditure, and that stems from a request from a board member. So I think it's a partnership.
Right, so we see it in the board packet and that's it. And then whatever questions we have, we would ask about it.
That was at a workshop that there was a conversation about looking at possibly expending additional dollars that came from a board member.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a place where I think a lot of that takes place. It's at a board meeting is things where that discussion takes place.
So you don't feel it's worth having a finance committee to review and to look at a $95 million budget and to try to strategize as to how that should be moved forward?
Sure. I think this committee of the whole, we're happy to talk about it as much as you want to talk about it. When it comes to the 22-23 budget, it's going to start right here.
Understand.
Just like it did last year. It's going to be this committee. I don't think there's going to be as I understand it, it's not going to be a 3-person committee. It's going to be a 7-person committee that's going to do that as we plan next year and set priorities. And so, yeah, no, I believe that's very important.
I think that's honestly one of the things that I'm looking forward to with the committee of the whole structure. It's an opportunity for all of us to be thinking through this and presenting questions to the administration at the same time, bouncing ideas around off of each other. I think that's one thing that we haven't tried. I mean, we've done that a little bit with workshops, but this is going to be an opportunity for us to dig a little bit further as a group into the budget. And the only way we can really do that is at a board meeting.
Or a finance meeting.
Right, but that's only 3 of us.
That's
right?
correct. Right.
That's 3 of us
Right.
that report back to the board at the table, but
Right.
the committee of the whole structure gives all of us the opportunity to dig in. and
Understand the
say,
concept of the committee of the whole, but again, I don't see that committee of the whole meeting about finance monthly or twice a month or anything else like a finance committee would normally meet.
Historically, I think our finance committee only ever met, what?
Well, that's because
quarterly
I
or
don't,
twice
I
a
don't
year?
think people called meetings in the progression they were supposed to be called in. I don't know. That's just my opinion. So.
You talk finance in every board meeting, every workshop. I would venture to guess that a majority of the decisions that board makes are connected to the budget and dollars.
Well, yeah, that's what we're supposed to do.
Oh, I know.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
So of course it is.
Every meeting touches on budget.
And obviously, regardless of whether it's a bond subcommittee or a committee of the whole, Mr. Ingleter is always willing to answer the phone if any board member has any question or concern regarding any budget item, so.
Oh, I understand that. I've called him in the past.
Roger and I have some too.
So,
Yeah, on a piggybacking what Bill's talking about. So again, I've been on the finance committee at different times in my board time here, and I was even attending finance meetings before I was on the board, and Star may remember that. But in that was some information gained that you wouldn't have gotten unless you were going to those finance committee meetings, because it was a little kind of like we've talked about other reasons similar. And I'm going to relate these directly. So the finance committee, curriculum, health, safety, that kind of stuff, they really do a lot in a committee setting versus the board. You know, we're volunteers, and the reality is we're jumping in here, and this budget, you know, heading towards $100 million now is, I think that not having a finance committee meeting, and a finance committee itself is probably not, actually, no, it's not. We should have a finance committee differently than you may have other committees, but I think the same way as the curriculum committee in the guidance, because the bottom line is you're approving the curriculum, you're not setting curriculum. So when you're in the business of the school board, you know, you can say, well, I'm just going to adopt what curriculum brings to me, or you're going to be in a position that you're going to be instrumental in developing the curriculum so it goes on to do what it's supposed to do in the eyes of the school board. And I personally believe in that. So because you're voted in local official, and that's what you do. You bring your expertise to the board because you live here and what your community needs. So in this $100 million budget almost, it's probably not good business not to have a finance committee. And I would refer everybody on the board to Mason Schools, to Mason Public Schools. And I'll bring a copy of their board agendas. Their board agendas are very clear. They have it all spelled out, and they have it every time, boom, boom, boom. And they have their committees, they have their committee assignments, they have the dates that committees are going to run, they have everything. And they've done a very nice job. And just so it's for knowledge too, is they have the same Neola policies that we have. But they do it totally different. And I believe it's way more transparent. So I would encourage that we start with finance, but just as important to me is curriculum. And obviously health and safety. Where do you say which one's more important? Health and safety may take a priority on all of them, actually. So that's how I feel about it.
All right, any further discussion regarding the proposed amended budget? All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. That takes us to item H, closed session superintendent evaluation. Do you have a motion?
So moved to enter closed session to consider a periodic personal evaluation in as much as the superintendent requests a closed session.
We have a motion by Mr. Stahl, support by Ms. Reed. We need a roll call vote on this. Ms. Ackermite?
Yes. Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Trombley?
Yep.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Dr. Krebs?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes. That passes 7-0. All right, so we are going to go into closed session as a board to discuss the superintendent evaluation process. Do you want us to go in the room? Yeah. So if you all want to stay here, we will go to the room. So we'll be back.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, I pushed it back a little bit.
That's why I got it down. It's not heated though.
It's not needed.
I guess the heat didn't come out in here, did it? Man.
At least they ask.
Open here. Here.
Go back to the stairs. Yeah, I think that we did it. Okay, I was gonna just say that we're back.
Cameras and
Yeah.
mics are still on. So.
Okay, we are back in open session, and I would like to make a statement that the Brighton Board of Education is issuing this statement regarding the annual performance evaluation of Brighton Area School Superintendent, Dr. Matthew Alaba. Superintendent Matthew Alaba has earned a rating of highly effective from the Brighton Area Schools Board of Education in his annual performance evaluation. It is the highest possible rating and considers areas such as community relations, business and finance, educational leadership, as well as student growth and achievement. Dr. Alba arrived in the district in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and despite those challenging circumstances, has served as an exceptional leader. His rating is also a reflection of the dedication and commitment that he possesses to the growth and success of all students, and we look forward to the bright future ahead for Brighton area schools with Dr. Outlaw as our superintendent. Dr. Outlaw, thank you very much for all that you do for our district. We very much appreciate your dedication and commitment to the success of our district. Thank you. All right, so that moves us now to the next item on our for action agenda, item I, extension of superintendent's contract. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Support. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Stahl, supported by Ms. Mitchell. And for clarification, the motion is to extend the superintendent's existing contract to a full 5-year term. We are about a year and a half into the existing contract, which originally was a 5-year term. This will extend that so that we are still operating under a full 5-year term. So we have motion and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 5-0. Okay, that closes our for action portion of our agenda and moves us into for future action, item A, additional staffing auto lab. Who'd like to?
I think we passed that one. That was Mr. Collins specifically asked for that to be on the agenda. That was not administrative.
And then he apparently had to leave early this evening, so we'll pass on further discussion of that until.
Necessary.
Sure.
Again, came up from the last meeting that we had in regards to the dyno and the lack of staffing and supervision that we have in the auto lab to restore that program, to bring it back to the way it was back when we had the other teacher, where again, in my opinion and some of the other opinions, that the current instructor needs additional help in there. And from a hands-on standpoint, he probably knows what's going on, but from a teaching standpoint, I don't think that's his strong suit. So if the idea would be to put an additional teacher in there for the book work and the class work, and again, have him and the parapro out in the lab where again, the kids get exposed to it far more than what they do now. So that would be the idea of adding an additional instructor to the auto lab.
I just want to ask a couple questions then. So I know that initially it's been really challenging to find instructors, certified teachers for these CTE kind of courses. So that's the first thing. So are we looking at an additional teacher, certified teacher? Do you think what the intention is?
Well, I think because don't forget, he's got the classroom portion of it and he's got the hands-on portion of it. He doesn't have a teaching degree or a teaching background.
Right.
He's got the hands-on. So I think the idea would be to have him again out in the lab from the hands-on standpoint, and then have an actual teacher that has a teaching background be in the classroom along maybe his assistant to guide a little bit from the automotive technical standpoint, but to actually do the administration portion of it and the teaching portion inside the classroom, which would free him up to be out in the lab with another group.
And I understand that, and I still think I think it will be challenging to find that right person who is qualified to do that. So that would be my first question. The other question I think is, I'm not opposed to this. I think it's when we look at staffing issues, I think it's important to look at staffing issues, the whole thing. I don't want to do kind of one-offs and just keep plugging holes. I want to look at the entire staffing situation and kind of see if there's other places. So we're looking at the whole picture so that in a month, we're not saying, well, this is another position that needs it. This is another position. So I'd want to kind of get a big picture.
Oh, that's probably a good idea.
Just make sure we're looking at everything. So I guess that would be a request to the administration to look at the total staffing. And in terms of faculty, certified teachers, parapros, what kinds of numbers we have.
Okay, yeah, I think we can work on that. I mean, the ratios are pretty straightforward. It's usually the class sizes. The only areas where you have additional staffing in a classroom would be when you have special education teachers, typically where you may have 2 or 3 adults in a classroom. In the auto lab right now, you have 2. You have a teacher and then a technician. So there's 2 adults in there currently. But I think beyond autos and your special education classes, typically you don't have 2 people in any classrooms. So I think that's what we don't even need to research that really. That's pretty much what you have across the district.
What about parapros? So how are parapros?
Yeah.
I know they're often played special needs students,
Yeah.
but how is that kind of ratio?
Yeah, and it's usually based on IEPs. And so students or classes where you have students with or multiple students that have IEPs typically would have a parapro in there or a co-teacher, special education co-teacher that would be in there as well. So special education oftentimes has that additional support. I know that autos does. And Mr. Scanlon, can you think of any other areas where you would have multiple staff?
Health and Human Services, CTE program as well.
Okay.
The additional certified.
Absolutely. So you have a second person in there as well. So, okay. I think that's what you have across the district. So,
That conversation, I'm not opposed to having more people at all, but I think this position, I don't know if there is such a thing as an automotive instructor, like a degree that says that's what they teach. I know in the trades, I've been told they will use the amount of years that you've done it. And you can get a waiver every year. I can't remember exactly how it goes.
Well, that's what this guy's under right now.
That's what he's under right now?
Right.
And it's under, how is it, you have to be under a teacher to do that, but they don't have to be in the room, right? It doesn't have to be inside that room.
No.
So maybe we need, because the district I'm working in right now, that's how they've staffed their entire trade center. But you've got, I've talked with a bunch of them, and it took them a few years to figure out the teaching part, because that's not what they were doing. They were training people, but that's different than teaching kids. So I agree, it's gonna be difficult to find them, and we can find another way around it to get it done.
Well, I agree. I think it's difficult to find, but I don't think anybody's looking either.
That's true.
I haven't seen any type of ads. I haven't seen anything, and it's been going on for at least 3 years now.
So just to, and I appreciate everybody's perspective on it. And obviously, Mr. Trombley is actively involved with it, and he knows a lot about this program. We did ask Dr. Darga and the high school administration to do a full assessment on that program, and they came back with I know I shared that in the memo, that positive, very positive feedback regarding the direction of the program. Mr. Conley and Mr. Trombley both were part of some brainstorming that we did during the summertime on ways to improve everything from inventory. And, Mr. Conley, he had his group came in, and I know Mr. Trombley assisted with helping with some of the improvements to the physical plant there and everything. Getting feedback that it's been a very positive year this year, and that the teachers making significant improvements. And that's the report from Dr. Darga and from the administration at the high school. And again, that's just another opinion on it. And so I just want to share that the teacher is getting a good review from his evaluators.
So, Matt, do you know, have they had the NATAF program in there yet?
Yeah, they have not. It's a certification process that is coming, I believe, this spring. I don't think it's happened yet, but that'll be an external review of the program. So you'll be able to get feedback regarding.
Spring is coming to an end pretty soon.
It is. I know it's scheduled. I just don't know the exact dates
so
of
it's still
that.
scheduled to happen.
100%. We're absolutely in the queue for that. I just don't know the exact dates when that takes place.
That'll be a good testament.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any further questions, discussion? Okay, that moves us to the next item, B, textbook adoption. Ms. Mosier?
Yep. So
At our next meeting, we're going to look for you, we make the recommendation to approve the following textbooks. These are for our chemistry courses. This has been a long time coming. Just to give you an idea, we are operating from books from 2002. They started this process a couple years ago. We ran into a little bit of a hiccup with some COVID and kind of put a stop on some of our curricular needs. So they have gone through a process of looking at 3 different books and vendors. They looked through certain units and chapters and actually put that through an additional rubric. We call them an equip rubric, looking at the materials as well. So this is what we would, it's a 6-year license agreement, and this would be for our all chemistry focus, regular and honors chemistry courses.
Are these actual books or is it online?
Yeah, no, we'll have both. So this will actually be enough textbooks, so every student has their own textbook too, which is a little bit different than what we've had in the past as well.
So could you kind of tell us how often this is out of, you said these are old, these are replacing old texts. What's the usual kind of?
For textbooks?
Yeah, review process for textbooks. How long do you think?
So usually we cycle through curriculum every 5 to 6 years on average. So I think I presented that one of my first things when I got here was like putting them back on a curriculum cycle. So they may or may not want new textbooks. Some of that depends on if there's new standards that come through. Some of it could be new material or updated materials, instructional practices. So this is delayed, definitely. Part of it was just with the NGSS adoption of standards back in the day. So when I got here, you had just finished adopting some science curriculum for JK8, and I think even the biology, but chemistry and physics were kind of sitting there in the wings to look at some other materials. Physics is going to pilot one out this year. They did try one, but they want to go a full year piloting something before they bring it forward. So I would say 5 to 6 years. Typically, some programs require it more often. So your CTE programs require new materials every 5 years.
And the next generation standards, science standards, these are fairly recent so that we can expect them to
Yes.
stay for a while.
Oh, yes. Yep. There has not been talk about new standards for NGSS yet.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions? Okay. That moves us to item C, 2019 bond program items.
I apologize, I forgot to pass these 2 things out to the board before we got going. They were meant to be at place, but these are the 2 items we'll be talking about. We're hoping to talk about them tonight and then get them approved at the next Monday.
Next
at the meeting. Yeah, since we've changed the committee structure, it's kind of messed with our timing of how we're doing things. So we're still adjusting to that just a little bit. So first one I want to start with is the Barton Mallow letter, and talk about this is the letter from Brian Jesse. Brian Jesse is here tonight in the audience to answer any questions we have, and included is Brandon. Brandon's never been to a board meeting, so he's learning a lot.
Sorry.
But anyway, I'm gonna just rough this in and you guys can ask questions of Brian or myself. Essentially, we put out the bid replacing the public address systems in the buildings. And not only are they ancient and not necessarily working with the more recent phones and technology, but we also have some safety and security issues we wanted to address as far as things that brought up by our SROs with external speakers on the buildings and just some upgrades of that nature. So we did put out the bid. There was a public bid opening on March 25th. You'll see that we put it out as a base bid to replace everything. After the post-bid interviews were done, we did accept some voluntary alternates brought forth by one contractor, one being a Bogan dashboard and the other being a voluntary alternate to utilize the existing speakers and cabling. And the cabling on a speaker system is just a copper wire, so it's not exactly, a high-tech thing, and copper doesn't usually go bad. part of that package and part of that voluntary alternate is to tone out every speaker in the district and give us a complete rundown of what those are. And you will see down below, there's a $60,000 allowance in case we do have to replace some of the speakers. Maybe they got wet in a roof leak or something where they're crackling now. We'll know that, and we'll put that allowance in there.
I have a question.
Huh?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just experience this. A lot of time, I imagine this is gonna be under a permit as well, or are you going?
Yeah, they'll pull a low voltage permit.
Okay, because 9 times out of 10, an inspector comes along and says, I want all that stuff tied up properly because it wasn't done right. A lot of that will be run, open face, and just had an experience with that. And that'll have a lot of costs. So, is that you think covered in that 60,000?
So they do have support, so just to provide a little bit more clarity, which I don't know if it's 100% covered in there. Their voluntary alternate obviously makes some assumptions that some of that stuff's in good shape.
Yeah.
But it does include supplementing, so Mike mentioned that that there was some speakers on the exterior of the buildings and then some supplemental speakers inside. All of that stuff will still be provided, the new additional expansion systems. But then using those existing speakers in all the buildings except for actually Miller, where we already know that all the wiring is not shielded and it's causing some interference with other systems in the building. So we're going to replace that wholesale as well at Miller to alleviate those issues. But yeah, that's a good point. I don't know that it would.
You don't know until you know.
We'll take care of all those issues as they come about, but I don't know the extent of what the cost might be to resplit it. I guess if you don't mind, just a couple other key things. A couple things are right now you have different systems in different buildings, and so Mike mentioned that you can't integrate into the phone system right now because they don't have the capability because they're so old. This will put the entire district on one system, which is a Bogan E7000 system, which is a current product. It will sit on the network, so the district can make a page. So like the superintendent here can make a page from this building that reaches all buildings concurrently or simultaneously. And it just provides you some additional things like that with a good safety feature, I think, as far as instant communication.
Didn't you put a new phone system in the last bond?
We did put a new phone system in, but we did not replace the paging systems.
Because I thought the capabilities of that phone system were able to call and have speakers and that kind of stuff between the different phones, and that was the idea of that phone system.
It's an IP phone system, which there are some major things there that phone system did, which it accommodated the E911 standard, which is where when they call 911, dispatch knows where that call's coming from the district. It also allows you to do something for voicemail and integrate with, just to utilize speakerphones and all that thing and send voicemail to email, I believe. But I don't know that it was intended at the time to tie into all the paging systems. And that really would come from the paging system being able to accept the connection from the phone system. So now we can do that with the new paging system.
Okay, how much did we carry for technology in the bond?
7 plus.
How much?
7 million plus
7?
on technology, yeah.
And where do we stand now on it?
There's probably about 2 million.
Left?
Yeah. 'Cause we already priced this out.
Where's this fit into that 2 million?
No, this was already built into that program. This was part of the 7 million originally.
So with it, there's still the 2.
Yeah, I think we're still working on the rest of the programs there.
So this is the last major installation component of the bond for technology where it has the contractors come in to install things. Most of the remaining funds are there for device replacement. It's being purchased out throughout.
And is this going to be done this summer?
The schedule that I laid out just based on the scope of the work was to do the high school and the 2 middle schools this summer and then take care of the elementaries by Christmas break.
So everything will be wrapped up by Christmas break?
Sorry?
Everything will be done by Christmas
Yes.
of 23, 22?
Technically what's laid out is January, the first
Yeah, okay.
Monday after Christmas break is over to be substantially complete. So
Operational.
Operational, we would probably be tweaking out any, loose end.
Okay. And everything is in stock and we wouldn't be waiting for any parts or pieces or anything?
I've talked to them, at this point, everything has been told that, things are readily available, there's no long lead.
Okay.
So they should be able to hit the ground running when school gets out of back school.
And they're discarding the old stuff?
Yep.
Okay.
And in that program, we're carrying about 870 for this program. So that was including contingencies. So we're well within that range.
Yeah.
Considering that the 60,000 is an allowance. So we're well under that number. So we're pretty comfortable that we've got enough in case something goes wrong.
Okay.
So
And yeah, go ahead.
this is for all the buildings,
That's correct.
including Beck?
Yeah.
Including this one? Okay.
So just to keep elaborating, the nice thing about this system is you'll have zone paging where you can page to the alternative high school separately from the administration wing, but then the administration wing would still get things like emergency pages. We set up those zones so that they would operate that way.
Thank you.
Is there training involved in this number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on the paging system? All right, the other piece that I handed out was we're looking for approval next week on the remaining pieces of the elementary and multi-STEAM renovations for furniture and equipment. And the majority of this stuff that we're asking for approval on is the library, like old bookshelf furniture. That's the big pieces of it. There's a lot of stuff in these quotes, but the expensive pieces of it are the actual shelves and stuff. I put this summary together because I know that was a question the last time we brought furniture for this. So you'll see the gray shaded is the American Interiors on contract piece. I had to back out some labor because they double counted the labor in here as quoted for both during normal business hours when it's back to overtime. So I backed up overtime. But you'll see we're falling right within the range of the budget, including the KI stuff that we approved before. So I just want to bring that up. But we are asking for approval on these two items next week on Monday. Just for timing purposes, we've got to get this stuff ordered and moving.
We have these to take away, right?
Yeah. You can take
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, we're not in a closed session, so feel free to give me a call if you have questions next week. But we will obviously talk about it more next week.
Any questions? All right. That concludes the 2019 bond program items and closes for future action, which brings us to the next item on our agenda, the closed session.
So moved to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing negotiation strategies connected with the BPA and investment bargaining units, inasmuch as the administration has requested a closed session.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Stahl, support by Ms. Mitchell. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please. Ms. Ackermeyer.
Mr. Trombley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Krebs?
Yes.
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes, that passes 5-0. So we will be going into closed session. That is the last item that we have on our agenda this evening. Once we return from closed session, we will be concluding the meeting without any further business to be said.
We're going to stay here, right?
Yeah, we can stay. We're good with that.